On May 7, 2017, the body of 43-year-old Brad McGarry was discovered in his home in Bellaire, Ohio. The news spread in the city quickly that he had been murdered. The man who found him dead was his best friend, David Kinney, who was shocked and horrified by the sight. But as investigators began to peel back the layers of this tragic event, they found that not everything was as it seemed. This is the story of a friendship marred by secrets, lies, and an unimaginable betrayal. Brad McGarry was a beloved member of his community. A coal miner and former hairdresser, Brad was kind and open-hearted. He lived alone in his house where friends and family would visit. Brad was also gay. While accepted by most, it hadn't been without its challenges in the small conservative town of Bellaire, so his childhood was tough. Despite those challenges, Brad had found peace and acceptance in his friendships, especially with his best friend David Kinney. The two met through work in the coal industry and had been inseparable since. David, a married man with kids, would spend a lot of time with Brad, bring his wife and kids over for dinner, help with chores, and hang out like brothers. To everyone around them, David and Brad's friendship was nothing out of the ordinary, just two guys who had a deep bond. But on May 7th, that bond would be broken. It was David who found Brad's body. That afternoon, David, his wife Cherie, and their daughter came over to return a weed trimmer to Brad's house. When they found the front door open a little, they felt uneasy. David went in, cautiously calling out for his friend. His daughter sensed something was wrong and stayed outside with her mum. What David found in the basement shocked him to his core. Brad was lying face down, blood pooling under his head. He had been shot twice in the back of the head like an execution. It was a gruesome sight. David yelled for his wife to call 911. "My God, Brad is dead. He's been shot. There's blood everywhere." Cherie Kinney. And within minutes, the police arrived. It looked like a clear-cut murder. But who would want Brad dead, and why? At first, the investigation went nowhere. The crime scene looked staged. Cabinets were open, drawers were ransacked, and it looked like the house had been burglarized. But there was no sign of forced entry, and nothing of value was taken. The police thought whoever killed Brad knew him well enough to get into his house. Of course, investigators went to David Kinney, the man who found the body. David was clearly upset, describing Brad as his best friend. He told the police he had no idea who could have done this, but suggested they look into Brad's past relationships, personal and professional. Brad had mentioned having some problems at work, and David hinted maybe an ex-boyfriend was involved. The investigators followed those leads, interviewed Brad's co-workers and former partners, but nothing stuck. The case was going cold fast. But then, 2 days after Brad's death, a crucial break in the case came. Investigators sat down with Brad's cousin, Skylar Strawser, who had been close to him. Skylar revealed a startling piece of information that Brad had confided in her about a secret relationship with a man named DJ. She explained that Brad had been romantically involved with this man for several years and had grown increasingly frustrated with the secrecy. According to Skylar, Brad had told her that he had given DJ an ultimatum: either leave his wife and commit to their relationship, or he would reveal the affair. The police were stunned. Brad had been involved in a secret relationship, but with whom? Skylar's next words sent shockwaves through the investigation. DJ, she explained, was David Kinney. Suddenly, everything changed. The best friend who had been at the centre of the investigation all along was now implicated in a web of lies and deception. Investigators immediately brought David back in for questioning. At first, he denied everything, insisting that his relationship with Brad had always been platonic. But when confronted with the information provided by Skylar, David's story began to unravel. Pressed for details, David admitted that he and Brad had been involved in a romantic relationship for years, something he had kept hidden from his wife, Cherie. He claimed that Brad had become increasingly demanding and had threatened to expose the affair if David didn't leave his family. On the day of the murder, David said, he had gone to Brad's house to tell him that their romantic relationship was over. But what happened next would prove to be even more chilling. David changed his story several times throughout his interrogation. At first, he claimed that after breaking the news to Brad, an argument had ensued, and Brad had pulled a gun on him in a fit of rage. According to David, he had wrestled the gun from Brad in self-defense and shot him in the heat of the moment. But the evidence didn't support this version of events. Brad had been shot twice in the back of the head, in execution style. There were no signs of a struggle, and the forensic evidence made it clear that the shots had been fired from behind. David's claim of self-defense simply didn't add up. Faced with the mounting evidence against him, David revised his story again. This time, he claimed that a third man, an unknown assailant, had been at Brad's house that afternoon. According to David, this man had shot Brad during a confrontation, and David had been too scared to intervene. He claimed the mysterious man had threatened his life, warning him to keep quiet or face the same fate as Brad. But the investigators didn't believe him. As the investigation continued, it became clear that David had been living a double life. On the surface, he was a devoted husband and father, someone who appeared to have it all together. But beneath that facade, he had been struggling with his secret relationship with Brad, a relationship he knew could destroy everything if it ever came to light. Investigators believed that Brad had become worried about living in secrecy and had ultimately threatened David to reveal the affair, putting David in a difficult position. Faced with the urgent need to protect his family and uphold his reputation, David made a tragic choice to eliminate Brad permanently by killing him. It appeared that he had invited his friend to his home, claiming they would discuss their problems, but instead, he shot him without hesitation. David Kinney was arrested and charged with aggravated murder. During the trial, the prosecution argued that David had executed Brad to prevent him from exposing their affair. The defence, on the other hand, maintained that David had acted in self-defence, fearing for his life when Brad allegedly became violent. But the evidence was clear Brad had been shot from behind in a manner consistent with a premeditated execution. The jury saw through David's shifting stories and rejected his defence. After an 8-day trial, David Kinney was convicted of aggravated murder and sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The case of Brad McGarry's murder shocked the town of Bellaire and left the community grappling with the tragic loss of a man who had only wanted to live his truth. For those who knew Brad, the revelation that his closest friend had killed him in such a cold and calculated way was almost too much to bear. David Kinney's double life had caught up with him, and in his desperation to keep his secrets hidden, he had taken the life of the one person who had loved him the most. The story of Brad McGarry and David Kinney is a haunting reminder of the devastating consequences that can arise from secrets, lies, and betrayal. It serves as a cautionary tale of how even the strongest bonds of friendship can be shattered by the weight of deception, and how, in the end, the truth always comes to light no matter how deeply it's buried. Comment down below your viewpoint and let us know what your take on this case is. And if you like our true crime-based video content, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you for watching and stay tuned for more upcoming videos.